I actually shot your show last week.
Okay.
In Detroit, so I'm excited to talk to you.
That was a fun night.
It was a great night. So thanks again. Thanks for taking the time to speak with me. How are you guys doing on the tour?
Pretty good, actually. We're really happy with the reception so far. We're towards the tail end of things, I guess. Only 6 shows left with today counted. So, but a little bit tired, but that's to be expected. Other than that, all good.
Okay. Given the tour is coming to an end, how does it feel to finally get a full run in the U.S., especially given the bumps over the past few years?
Yeah. Well, we thought we'd have one last year with Judas Priest, but hell. That was one of the things we actually said when we came over here in Seattle about 4 weeks ago. It's like, let's fucking finish this thing this time around, Pardon my language, but no, that was sort of the main mission. Let's go on tour and fucking finish it,
Well, like I said, I shot the show in Detroit, which was fantastic. And it was great to see you guys paying homage to Detroit Rock City with Tommy doing a cover. Everyone loved that. That was great. Ever since Hellfest, he's occasionally stepped in for songs such as Swedish Pagans or some brief covers. Can you take us back and tell us how hectic it was given when you lost your voice and how he and Chris kind of took over the vocal duty?
Oh, that was super hectic. I mean, I've never had troubles with my voice like that. I mean, it just disappeared. And it's pretty close. I was feeling bad earlier during the day, but I've had that, all the time. I can barely speak, but I can still sing. But then I started warming up just to be safe, and nothing really came out. So I was panicking, and they didn't know until, let's say, an hour before the show. So I just went into the production office and started printing sheets of lyrics, removing everything unnecessary, and, printing 2 copies of every song and put on their monitors between songs so they could read, because obviously they know the choruses and such where they are singing choirs and stuff, but they don't know all the lyrics for the lead vocals. So that was really last minute. I think actually I came up to the stage with those papers when the intro was already rolling, so it was that close. We said I'm gonna sing 1 to 2 to 3 songs depending on how long my voice would last, and then then I did secretary duty, and I went and gaffer taped new lyrics on the monitors for them. And it's tricky as well, because sometimes there are guitar riffs to be played, and then you're singing in a very different rhythm, which isn't a problem if you're practiced doing it.
Yeah.
But in many cases it was like, oh shit, they found that out the hard way live. But I think they did a great job, both of them.
Yeah, and it seemed like they had fun with it too.
Yeah, they were polite enough to smile, but they did not like it. I think they enjoyed it after, that type 2 fun. It's not fun while it's actually happening, but afterwards you're thinking it's like, yeah, fun.
I'm sure Tommy didn't mind too much.
No. He any second he can be in the singing position, he will enjoy.
Have there been any highlights or standout moments for you with the tour?
Yeah, several actually. There's been really good shows on several places, but especially the average atmosphere of the crowd. We've had never too brutal crowds, but also pretty damn polite. You're talking between songs and it's sort of civilized, but still people are jumping, having fun, and headbanging and stuff like that. But nothing too violent, and pretty much no shows that were outright boring. Which is good.
Yeah, I know. When I walked in, I saw the helmets, and I was like, okay, this is gonna be a show.
Yeah, we brought as much as we could over from Europe, but seeing as we're a smaller band here in the US, we can't bring the European production because, full-size production there is for 15,000 seater arenas. So
I was excited when you came out with like the smoke on. I was expecting fire to come out or something. I was like, what's going on with this?
little bit tricky with the pyros here in the U.S. since the Great White Accident.
I want to talk. You've crossed paths with Epica on a number of occasions, and they even played Sabaton open air. So it was great to finally see you guys tour together. How did that come about?
Actually, I don't know exactly how it came about, but it's like, with a band like Epica, we've been, running into each other over the years quite a lot because we were on the same festival circuit in Europe and we run into them. But with these things, it's always about timing. And we've had several bands sort of where every year we joke there's one or two bands you see on every festival. But then you're trying to line up a tour together. It's always about, oh, no, we can't tour them because we're in the studio making an album. Could you do it that time? No, sorry, because then we are already in Latin America touring or something. So I guess it was just one of those things that has been waiting to happen for quite some time, but just couldn't be done before due to, luck and timing reasons.
No, it's a great matchup. I want to talk all the songs that you've been playing. They're so well done for live crowds. I had mentioned to Par in an interview last week that it almost seems like these songs were written to be played live. When you're writing music, is that something that you think about or take into consideration?
Sometimes, and not always. And I would say less than 50% of the time, absolutely. But it's like what we all have in common in Sabaton. I mean, we're all, a bit different in music tastes, in age, what we grew up into. Chris and Hannes might like, a little more on the brutal side of things. Tommy might actually be more into power metal and maybe even, Gary Moore blues stuff, But one thing we all have in common is the classic 80s arena heavy metal thing,
Okay.
So I guess that comes through in the songwriting as well.
Given that there are so many fan favorites from this album and the fact that in general it can be difficult to write a set list, do you feel like there are any songs that will likely be having frequent appearances on the future set lists, or is that something that's still kind of too early to tell?
Oh, it's always hard to tell actually in advance. I would say sometimes quite early. Like on the previous rotation when we were doing it, we realized pretty fast that Attack of the Dead Men and Red Baron were going to be with us for a while. I would say Stormtroopers is probably a song because everybody in the band likes it and it goes very well with the crowd and our fans seem to really like it. So I'm guessing Stormtroopers would be my first guess of one of those that'll be in our set for quite some time, I guess.
Yeah, the place was shaking when you played that. Shaking. Like the whole floor. I'm trying to take a still shot in the balcony and my camera's just doing this.
Okay. Oh, that's good news. Not for you, but...
Oh, no, it's fine. I'm just like, okay, this is a good one.
Yeah.
Do you come up with the set list based on kind of the country or town or city at all? Is there anything that kind of...
Yeah. For example, when we played in Nashville, we changed out Steel Commanders for Screaming Eagles because we're close to Fort Campbell. And Screaming Eagles is obviously about the Screaming Eagles, the 101st Airborne. And Fort Campbell, where their base is only an hour away. Nashville. So in that sense, yes. And also when we are touring, if we play in Poland, we have songs about Polish history that's going to be in the set that might not be in the set for the rest of the tour, which is kind of nice. That means we don't have to play exactly the same stuff over and over again. Get a little bit of rotation on the songs.
Polak here.
Ah, Polish. All right. How far back or recently?
My last name is Brzeska.
Ah, yeah.
And Ogorek.
Ogorek, yeah. You speak any Polish?
Not anything that's appropriate.
Yeah. I usually say that when I'm in Poland, oh, you speak Polish? Yeah, I can say kurwa. That's 30% of the language,
Before you decided to do a direct follow-up and after you had released The Great War, Did you guys get bombarded with questions from fans wondering why you didn't cover a specific story, given that there's so much that happened?
Yeah, I mean, also we got a lot of inspiration already when we announced the Great War. Even though we did a lot of research, there were still a lot of great stories we hadn't heard about, but especially for us as well. I mean, two standouts that we wanted to do already on Great War was Christmas Truce and the story of the Harlem Hellfighters, because they were so iconic things that we really wanted on the album, but we didn't have the right music. So they were sort of really targeted for the second time around. And then also we realized we didn't have anything from the sort of Southern front, Italian front on the first album either. Mm-hmm. So then we ended up with Soldier of Heaven from that one then. So a lot of stuff actually came to us from fans. In many cases, I mean, we're passionate about history and we're by no means experts. But in many cases, we've had emails or books given to us. I mean, I had a book today actually given to us from a fan.
Oh, that's great. It's great that you kind of like listen to that and, take in what your fans,
Yeah, but so many good stories. I mean, every nation has its own history. And what's common knowledge for a kid in Sweden might be unheard of in America and vice versa. And then you're touring in Brazil. And even though we love military history, there's a lot of great stories that everyone, or a lot of people are familiar with over there that we never heard about. And also, especially with certain, there's always a language barrier as well. It could be French, it could be Brazilian, Portuguese. It's usually harder to get information about these things. If it's Scandinavian history, well, we can read most Scandinavian languages. And if it's English, obviously, or Australian or American, we can get that. But especially Eastern Europe as well. No matter if it's Poland or Czech Republic, a lot of their history was sort of suppressed during the Cold War.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, you're transcending metal across, all facets of the universe.
Wow. Never heard it explained like that before. That was a nice way of putting it.
There's an infinite, like you were saying, there's an infinite list of stories to talk about, relating to different wars and to World War I. But do you feel satisfied that you got to cover significant events such as Christmas Truce and Hellfighters that you didn't include on the Great War?
Yeah, I mean, right now it feels like next album we make is not gonna be, World War I. I'm not saying there aren't amazing stories. We can make 10 more albums about World War I and only have good stories. But at a certain point, we gotta sort of abandon the subject, I guess, and move on. It's also, if you want to create a sort of a new stage show as well, it's all kind of gray and brown and green and dark,
Yeah.
So, and also it's not the nicest research actually. Out of all the conflicts you can, it feels very dark somehow. Even though obviously, any conflict has its dark side, and it's just that whole thing how warfare turned into a industrialized machine of death, sort of. And at the outbreak of World War I, a lot of armies and were still some units or armies were still ready to wage war the Napoleonic way, sort of. They would still be officers with sabers and horses, and obviously rifles as well. But there was some of that was still, in the military arsenal of the, of both sides, I guess, or all sides. And then during the war, how it turns into this, industrialized death machine. Birth of modern warfare, really.
I wanted to talk, we're almost at the 1-year mark of Christmas Truce being released. And if I remember correctly, this is a unique song because you wrote it a bit differently than how you do your other tracks. What was it like coming up with the story? Did you have the music to fit with the story, or did you get the story to go with the music?
Music was custom written for for the story this time around, really. And also at this, which is highly unusual, is that some of the lyrics were written at the same time as the music. Usually I have an idea what I'm writing about, but I put in random words or placeholder lyrics or something like that. But in this case, the chorus, most of it was written already when, figuring out and composing the song. It took a long time because it's, I don't know. It took several tries. I'm not used to writing waltzes. But it didn't occur to me until we were recording it. I'm like, wow, this is not only a, what do you call it? Different. We do have songs in 6/8, but this is properly 3/4, so it's a waltz,
You guys also released a surprise EP on us in the middle of this tour with a new song, Father, which is one of your most thought-provoking songs. Can you tell us a little bit more about this track?
Yeah, I mean, obviously about Fritz Haber, which is on one hand the father of the Haber-Bosch process, which is fertilizer and nitrogen-based fertilizer, and basically in that sense responsible for being able to sustain this amount of people on our planet. And at the same time, the father of chemical warfare, who developed, I guess, chlorine gas was his first development. And the duality of it. What I like about it, it shows that things aren't always black and white, How do you judge a man like that? You got to take the good with the bad, or, are you going to go with the maths, or are you going to go with the morals? And that whole thing, I think it sends a good message home that you can't always view things in black and white,
You can't always pass judgment.
Yep.
The band has always kept a nice flow with new music. Do you feel that EPs are a nice way to stay engaged with your listeners while simultaneously releasing music that might not necessarily fit into a certain album's concept?
Yeah, I mean, we did that with Bismarck, for example. Right before we released The Great War, we came out with this song about the World War II ship. So sometimes we have these stories we want to tell, and they don't sometimes fit the theme of an album we're planning on making. So I like both, actually. People are asking us sometimes, are you going to do EPs, or are you going to do singles, or are you going to keep on doing albums? I'm like, why the fuck would we choose? We can do all of it.
Yeah.
Of course, we'll make more albums in the future, but we're also making single tracks just because we want to. And the people who tell us, you should be making albums. Well, it's our band. We get to decide.
I know that you guys are also working on a film. Is that something that you can discuss at all?
Yeah, a little bit, but I mean, most of the details we can discuss are out there. It's based on obviously the War to End All Wars, the album, and it has some really amazing storytelling. It gives the viewer a deeper understanding, I think, of the stories than only the lyrics would do. So really impressed with the storytelling that the Yarn Hub has been doing on that one.
I also wanted to ask, like, how does it feel to, be so engaged in history and have it play so heavily into, not only your professional life and your personal life, but to realize that by you searching out and making albums and songs about this, that you are sharing important parts of history with people all over the world who, quite frankly, otherwise wouldn't, have access to something like this. And you're also presenting it in an artistic way.
Yeah, I mean, we never set out to educate, but if somebody learns along the way, that's a good thing, isn't it? And there's only so much we can tell in 3.5 minutes of heavy metal, I guess. But if it's a gateway, we can pique someone's interest, if you will. I find that as a really nice side effect. And there are enough bands singing about dragons and beer and stuff, and there's nothing wrong with that. I'll be the first one to admit that. But at the same time, we feel like there are so many fantastic stories that are being forgotten. So why the fuck should we make up new ones? You know?
I can appreciate that. Well, thanks again for speaking with me today. It was wonderful to finally see you guys here stateside and be able to photograph your whole show. I'm excited for you guys to make your return here. Is there anything else that you would like to add to your and say to your fans?
Basically, thank you for the good time. We had an amazing tour, and yeah, I hope we'll be able to come back soon.